All right, we're going to get going making these beautiful holiday cards. If you have a hunter or a nature enthusiast in your life, these are going to be the holiday cards you are going to want to send to them. So here are 3 examples that I made. This is what we're going for. I will set these aside for now, but I'll have one set up in the corner while we make this so you can see it. Okay, what else are we going to need? We're going to need the printout. And if you go to the community section of my homepage, I have a couple pictures that I uploaded. It's these 2. One of the deer, kind of a black and white photograph. The other one is a line drawing that we're going to use to transfer the image onto the cards. Okay, more about that in a little while. Okay, we're also going to need some watercolor cards. These are the ones that I have. They're 4x6, just fold in half. I like to keep them flat for what we're about to do. Then we need some graphite paper. And if you don't have any graphite paper, I always say you can grab a sheet of paper and scribble on it like this until you cover the whole thing. Or if you have a light board or just a window, because we're not putting it in the sketchbook, this would be really easy to transfer with one of those 2 methods also. Okay, what else do we need? We need some washi tape. And you can see I've got 2 cards already taped up for us. We also need a ballpoint pen and an eraser. I have more washi tape, various sizes, and I also have some painter's tape that's really thick that we're going to use to cover some of these edges. All right, what else? I've got white paint pens. I've got a variety of brush sizes. I've got gel pens that are silver, gold, and white, and a variety of different colors of watercolors. And I want to say about all this stuff, don't sweat it if you don't have it. Just grab what you have. There's no reason to go out and buy more stuff. We all know we've got that drawer full of art supplies. And even though it's fun to go buy more things, I know, but you can do all this with stuff that you already have. Okay, and then you're going to need some water. I've got 2 jars, one to keep clean and one I can get really nasty. A spray bottle because I like to spray down my palette. And then I've got a variety of rags. Just these are old bed sheets. I've got some old scrubs that I've cut up, and I just have those nearby and ready to go. All right, so grab your supplies and we're going to get this going. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is tape up the rest of these cards. I don't want them to shift around. This size will be good to put down in the middle here, and that'll cover the back side of this card. And then I need another piece over here, and I also have a scrap piece of paper kind of covering the rest of the back of that card. Now I've got the cards protected on each side, and I know I won't make a mess of things. So now it's time to transfer our design. So we've got this little guy, and I just need to place him on here. So I printed him out 4x6 because the opening of my card is 4x6, and I'll just place him right there and tape him down. I'm gonna get my graphite paper and simply trace around with my ballpoint pen. So I know this drawing is pretty crude, and that's okay because the point of this is really just a template. It's just a placeholder. It's just outline for us to keep our paint in. I'm not being too precious about the lines, but I do want to get the outline of this little guy, and make sure your tape is not coming up as you're drawing with. Okay, and before we take away the drawing, lift it up, check it out, see if everything is there. Okay, I think I like it. So I'm going to take it off. Then we're going to do the next one. So I'll place my little guy right about here. Okay, let's lift it up and check it out. I think I got everything in there. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't have the eyeball. You see that? I'm missing the eyeball. There we go. Now we got it. 2 cute little deer. Oh, I forgot the little squiggly line in that ear also, but we can always look back at the diagram, see what we got. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and spray down my stuff here and rearrange a little bit. Okay, so here we are. We're all set up. Our image transfer has happened. I've got my reference cards. I've got my watercolors wet. I've sprayed them down. I've got all my supplies. Here's the image we transferred. And then the other image that I supplied for you is this one, which I hope you printed it out too and set it to the side, because I'm going to use that during the whole time of how I paint these guys. And this technique, actually, you might think that it's difficult at first, upon first look, but I'm telling you, this is really easy, especially if you have a black and white printout. All right, so I'm just going to get started. So I have a number 4 round, and I'm going to pick a color. Let's see, tones. I think I'm going to do one that's purple, and then maybe with these highlights, like the hot pink highlights in it. So let's start there. So I'm going to go to my purple. I've got quite a bit of pigment on my brush, and I'm going to go for these dark spots. So I'm going to start at the tip of the ear and just stay within my line. I'm noticing that this comes over into that point, so I'm going to make that happen and fill this in. Now, I do have a lot of water on my brush as well as a lot of pigment. Okay, and now I'm going to come in and catch this edge, which is like a V right here. I'm really just doing this paint by number sort of situation, and I'm going to bring this down. And as it gets lighter right there, I'm going to go get some water on my brush and keep going, but with that lighter amount of pigment. Okay. Maybe down to the eye right there. Okay, and now I'm going to get some more pigment and do this area right here. And don't worry, it's really thick right now. Not thick, but it's really wet and it's pooling a whole lot. But I'm not worried about that because I know I'm going to come in and blot in just a minute. I'm going to get this other ear done, and then we're going to come and blot. More pigment on my brush. I'm going to start in this darkest spot right in here and bring it out to the edge. Okay, get some more water on my brush and bring the rest of this in. So really, we've just paint by number so far, rinsing my brush. I'm going to squiggle up the end of my rag like this. Let me get rid of these little strings. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go down and up. And I'm moving it off to the side, and I'm getting a new spot, down and up. Then I can go back to my brush. I'm looking back at this, and now I'm just going to move the pigment around where I want it to go. So I actually kind of like what's happening here on the ear. I might soften up that edge just to let it bleed in a little bit. Okay. See, just that slight little bit did so much. Okay, then all this pigment ran down. Now I want this back dark here, and I want it a little dark right there in that crevice, and then of course the ear. So I'm going to grab a little more pigment. I'm going to come back in and start dropping it back in on this side. Okay, so I see that there's a whole lot of pigment on my brush. So I'm going to rinse it and then feather the edge out. Okay. I'm going to leave some in that corner that I want a little bit darker. And I can blot again. And I know it's going to lift up more paint, but I'm going to have many chances of coming back and massaging this stuff. So I'm going to keep going right now. I'm going to skip over the eyes, and I'm going to come down, and the nose, and I'm going to come down around the nose. So more pigment. I get just below the nose and off to the side to right up underneath that eye where we have that little line. Let's see. So it's this line right here I'm going up to. Okay, and I'm leaving a little bit of white just to the right of the nose. And then I'm going to get water. And now I'm going to come into the white of the nose and bring it out to the purple we just did and kind of let it bleed. Can't help myself. One blot. I don't mind blotting because, you know I can always add more. I know it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, maybe I'll leave it like that right now. Got a little bit of water right here. Okay. All right. More pigment. Let's move on. Let's go to this dark area right here underneath the nose and the chin. Leaving that little bit of white just to the right of the muzzle. And then I kind of feel like it comes down in this line in a circle right here in between these two marks that we made. Okay, so that's a bit of pigment on the paper. So I'm going to rinse my brush, lots of water on my brush, and I'm going to come and start feathering these edges. So I'm going to go until this circle right here and bring this out and up. Really just staying in the lines that we made already, right? Now I've got a couple choices about this stuff where these white spots are. I can just go ahead and paint all over it and not worry about it, or I can try to go around. I'm kind of lazy, so I'm going to choose the former. Okay, I've got more pigment on my brush. Just going to kind of hit these dark areas that I see. And yeah, I might leave a little bit of this white, I decided. Okay. Going around, water on my brush. Getting back to the back side and coming down the leg. Pigment right there because it's so dark. Rest of the belly. Okay, and I'm stopping right here in this little curvature right here next to our teardrop shape. Okay, now I'm going to get my rag again scrunched up and I'm going to hit it. I hit it one good time and I actually really like that. So I'm going to move this stuff around now. Just going back to my photo reference. This dried up here, so I'm going to re-wet this. Do you want to blot that? Okay. Cool. All right, now I'm going to start feathering these edges some. Lots of clean water on my brush. I'm going to wet the areas I want the pigment to bleed into. And then I go up and touch the pigment. So I'm wetting the area and then I'm touching the pigment. Okay, I'm going to start coming down the legs. I just want a little bit of pigment, not a whole lot. That's definitely going to have to be blotted there. Come down the leg. So I noticed that the dark lines are on the right side of the legs, except for that last little bit. I can blot. Okay, doing the same thing. I'm going to start just a little more of this darker pigment to get it go down the leg. Still defining it though. There we go. And this one, rinse my brush, and then I'm going to feather this out a little bit. Knowing I'm going to blot, need to find a clean spot because I'm going to do one big blot. Boom. And I'm going to move this stuff around. Same here. I'm going to go for this really dark area. That's about it. Rinse my brush and feather. And a blot. Find there's too much pigment, I'm just going to re-wet the areas I want to lift off pigment. And then blot again. Soften that edge just slightly. All right, so let's get into this area here. I need to bleed this down. So I'm going to work on this edge. And re-darken this middle area. So I'm almost going to stop and let this dry, and we're going to go on to the other one. Just constantly looking back at my photo reference of where I want to darken things. Okay, I'm going to bleed this area by the eye. Okay, that looks pretty good. See, okay, this has gotten a little big here. I think I really want it up, so I'm going to blot the edge of that to make it smaller. I think that already looks better right there. Okay, so I keep watching this as it moves around, and if I don't like how something's happening or how something's drying, I can always move it and fix it, right? So like right here, I want it darker right there. I know I said I was moving on, but I do want some of this darkness to dry up in here for us. Okay. All right. Enough. Okay. Moving on. We're going to go over here, and I think I want a yellow orangey guy. So I think I'm going to go for my mid-tone of this like Indian yellow color. All right, so that's super light. I need to do something else, I think. Super light. Let's add some of this orange. Maybe we'll start there. I like that better. All right, let's get this ear. We're just starting this one the same way. Just going back up to these darker areas that I see and using the guidelines that we made, right? So I'm doing the section of the ears and above the eyes, the forehead, okay? And then I am going to blot. If you are afraid of the purple, grab another rag and continue on. So I like how that looks. I think that's going to play nicely. So let's continue on with the orange. It's very subtle. I know I'm going to drop some darker color in there eventually. We'll just think of colors that play nicely with the oranges. Maybe we can use some of this dark maroon as the shadows for the orange. I think that might look really pretty. But in the meantime, we're going to go back to the orange well. We're going to go for the right side of the nose. We're going to leave that little bit of white showing there, and we're going to connect that down. Right there. Rinse the brush, and then we're going to bleed that out just a little bit. More pigment, and we're going to get underneath that chin. And as I did the first one, you know, I'm becoming more bold with this one because I know a little bit more about the shapes that I'm doing and how I want it to look and what my paintbrush is doing for me, all the things. So you see, I'm just going back up there and hitting that a little bit darker. Getting water on my brush, spread this out, connect these edges so we don't have a hard edge. So that line drawing underneath what we're painting on is really, really helpful. I always appreciate guidelines. It makes my art, it makes my art that much more believable. And I really do not believe that it is cheating. I'm not a very good freehander. I'm going to go ahead and admit it. It just doesn't do well for me. So I have found I refine my designs, maybe in Procreate, or just lots of drawing and practice and moving lines around on a piece of paper, trying to get my design where I want it. And then I will ink it, you know, and take a picture and have it in my photographs so I can just print out my little line drawing, transfer it over, and be on my way. Boy, that looks pretty good. I'm going to do this back side. Kind of liking that. All right, I'm going to go for this back part of the legs now. And this one is dark here. These legs get dark on the side. All right. Water on my brush. Feather the edge. Rinse. Feather. Don't worry, we're going to blot all this. Okay. Scrunch it up. Big blot. Big blot. Got to replace some of it here. And I'm sure you see, I just constantly work around, move around. I'm thinking about keeping my whiter spots lighter and knowing that I can always lift off some of this paint. And that kind of helps get that mottled effect of the little dots on this fawn. Softening the edge. I think we're looking pretty good. No, wait. We're going to come back. We're going to get the head like we did this one, okay? So I'm going to come back and just kind of wet and feather some of this. I just want the paint to move around just a little bit. All right, now we're going to let this dry. And so now we can move on with the second layer of the deer. I'm going to go for this maroon color that we talked about earlier for some of the low lights. So I've loaded up my brush with some of the pigment. It's pretty watery, so I'm going to grab a little bit more. And I'm going to start hitting these darkest of the dark areas. So go back to your reference photo that you have printed out and just start assessing those areas that we keep hitting and drop in a little bit more pigment. And we're going to drop in pigment around all where the shadows are, and then we'll come back with a very watery brush and blend it all in. So I'm just going to continue dropping a little bit more of this dark I've got water now, and I'm going to start the feathering process. So just feathering out what we just put down, going around the edges, getting more water as I need it. And then I always know that I'm going to come back and blot. So it's not a big deal that it doesn't look perfect. We're going to get rid of a lot of it right there. Boom. And got a watery brush again, and just going back and kind of smoothing things out. Blotting where I need to and smoothing things out. So the process is the same over and over again. Grabbing more pigment, going to do the same thing on the ears, dropping it in the darkest places where we first started. And then I'm going to get some water on my brush and blend the edges. Blending, following both the black and white photograph and the line drawing, referencing them both as I go along. And don't be afraid, I mean, of an area. As you saw, if you put too much, whatever, you can always blot. Just going around, gonna blot one more time, boom, boom, and knowing I can always come back, right? So I'm gonna reapply in some of these areas, and I'm gonna blot. Right, and then just smooth out the edges. And see how it just drops in enough pigment here and there, and it keeps things a little irregular, keeps things organic and not so tight. And get some more pigment and go back down to the legs. Just going back and forth, back and forth. So it's the same process over and over again. I know I'm a broken record, but just, and of course, as I do 2 cards at one time, you're getting 2 chances to see how it is that I do this. So I'm going to finish dropping in just thicker pigment each time, following these lines, getting more water on my brush, and feathering the edge. Now let's go to this other one and let that orange guy dry. So I've sped up the video just a little bit more. I'm going to hit those areas, and like we did before, I'm a little bit bolder on the second one because I'm more aware of how the paint's moving around and where I need to actually put the paint also. All right, so I'm blotting a bit, and I've gone back in, not just with the purple, but also with some indigo. That indigo is a really nice shadow color for the purple. It really plays well together. All right, so now I'm gonna get that opera pink back out and use it for some of the highlights around the deer. Now I don't want to fill in all of the white spots. I actually want to go in some spots that are on the edge of the dark and the white. So kind of the mid-tones areas, I just want a suggestion of color. So just like the darks, I'm just popping in a little bit of color here and there, and then I've got water on my brush, and I'm just going to smooth it out just a little bit. But I think this pink really adds some more interest, some more 3-dimensional qualities to our deer. Yeah, that's looking really good. Just smooth this out just a little bit in those lighter areas. Okay, let's take a look at this other one. I want to add some yellow like I added the opera pink on the other one. And we're just going to let those colors kind of settle in and soak in the paper a little bit. I'm going to get some water on my brush and smooth out the edges. And look how that just brightened him up so much. Oh, I love it. A little bit of blot. Neutral tint, and start filling in the darkest of the darks again. Hitting those legs, the shadows in the middle, the edge of the nose. Smoothing those out. And actually, the way I just placed that paint on his face, it looks like he's smiling. So I'm gonna fix that in a little bit. It just went a little cartoony on me, but I'm smoothing out some of these darker areas. I think that just builds in some nice shadow for us. All right, getting some more water. And going in the ears and the head again in those places where we first started. Going back to the purple one, getting this ear a little bit more. And to fix that line a little bit, I think I had it down a little too far. All right, so now I've got some of that pink happening on the head. I like that. It kind of brightens them up a lot. Getting some more purple. Just blending it all where you think it needs it. And of course, if you need, you know, more shadow or things start to move around, by all means go back, revisit, add it in the areas that you think, because things change and shift, you know, as it dries. So it's just a process, and now I'm kind of dabbing in the dark paint on top of that. I think that looks really pretty. He's really coming to life. I love it. All right, rinsing my brush off, and now I'm gonna go for the face. So I'm gonna start dropping in these eyes, and they're kind of almond shaped. They're pretty big. I'm just using that Daniel Smith neutral tint because it's such a pretty color, and we've already used it for some of the shadows in the deer already. So I'm going to hit a little bit of the nose where it's the darkest dark, and pop in the eyes on this side. I'm just kind of looking at that shape based off of our printouts, our images that we have. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I need to go back and fix this one's nose and get rid of his smile he's got going on. So let's see if I can fix that. Just gonna drop in. Oh, I think I made it a little worse, but that's okay. He is smiling. He's got a really nice smile on his face, doesn't he? All right, let's fix it a little bit. All right. Just dropping in more color. And I am going to come back and blot after I feather this out just a little bit more. I'm using the paint that I have on my brush. There we go. A little bit better. I still have that smile happening on him. Adding in a little bit more orange just to brighten him up on the back side. And blotting that nose. Let's go back to it. Okay, that looks better. He's not all freaky smiling now. Dropping in a little bit more of that shadow. Nice. Okay, maybe just a little bit more right in there. Let's see, more maroon. And like I said, it's all relative to each other. So if you feel like, you know, your lights relative to the darks, relative to, you know, the midtones, what's happening, that's where you're going to add more. But keep referencing your image. This is such a good practice, and especially doing 2 at a time, it'll really hone your skills, and you'll figure out more of what you want to accomplish. Okay, a little bit more. I'm changing the shape of this eye just a little bit. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the background while those guys are drying. So I'm going to get some of this Indian yellow color, really watery, and just kind of go around the back. I'm not too concerned about getting it all the way to the edge of the deer because I kind of like that it's got this little glowing quality around it. So I'm just going to drop that little bit in, and I'm going to start to blot. And I'm just going to do a series of this over and over again in the background. So adding lots of water to the pigment, moving it around. And then I'm going to come back and blot. And that blotting really just adds variation to the amount of pigment that's left on the page, with that, which I think is really pretty. Again, it gives it a more organic feel, in my opinion, when things are irregular. Keeps your eye moving around the page, definitely. So, and you know, if you've noticed, I really didn't finish the bottom of the legs, and that's because we're going to pop that little bit of grass, and it's just going to kind of suggest that the legs are kind of disappearing behind the grass or what it's standing on. So let's go for a little bit more of this Indian yellow color down at the bottom to kind of weight it a little bit, and then we're going to dry everything before we move on to the next layer. Okay, I'm gonna fix a little bit of that face. All right. So, okay, so now I've got some green and it's really light. As you see, I've got my number 4 round brush back out and I'm just placing down just the slightest amount of pigment and I'm blotting. And then I'm gonna add some more of that yellow ochre color on top of that just to brighten up the grass. And then we'll put another layer of the dark green on top of it when we're all done. So swishing that around, going for the yellow ochre and blotting. Now I'm going to go back for the dark green for that last layer. It's a lot more pigment on the brush, getting a wet brush and moving it around and then blotting again. So these are the same techniques over and over again. I think the blotting again is just such a great way to go. I think a lot of people don't think about blotting watercolor as much as we have been doing here in this lesson, but I think it makes you a little bit more bold with what you're doing, and I think it really helps the learning curve of how to manipulate watercolors and get them to behave in the way that you want to. So right now I'm just going in with water and smoothing in that back edge. I don't want the attention really to be on the grass. I want the attention to be more on the deer. So I want it really soft without a lot of details down by the legs. So I'm going to start drawing this, and while I do, I'm going to take off this washi tape because it's already coming off around it. And as I do, I notice up top some of the watercolor has gotten away from the washi tape, so I'm just going to wipe it and then come back with a wet brush, douse the whole area, scrub it a little bit, and then blot, 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 and it'll take care of a lot of it. Now I know it didn't take care of all of it, but I'm also going to put a line of dots around the outside of the card, so I think it'll hide it nicely. All right, so let's finish drying those, and I think they have turned out beautiful with the couple layers that we put on them. If you find that you've got any stray pencil marks showing, grab your eraser and just take care of them. If you can't see them, don't worry about it. It would just be in that really light area around the edges anyway. Okay, so we are going to look at these eyes. You can either grab your white gel pen or your silver gel pen and just make either a little dot and a little line or just a little line in their eyes just to have a little bit of a shine. So it kind of wakes them up, makes them look alive. All right, that looks good. And just a little bit more right there. Now we can move on to the snowflakes. With our gold gel pens, we can just start drawing intersecting lines. And in this example, I've got 3 intersecting lines, which makes 6 spokes. And I'm just going to start by putting a little arrow type mark at the end of each one of the spokes. Okay, so then I'm going to start doing things to every other one. So I'm going to put 3 little arrows on that one, and that one. And then on the every other one, I'm going to do a long and a short, a long and a short, a long and a short. And then dots at the end of each one. I think that kind of dresses it up a little bit. All right, so now we need to look at the placement for the second one. So I'm going to make a smaller one down here over by the legs, just with 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 spokes, little V's, little dots, and then I'll put another set of little V's on the inside of each one, just one. Very pretty. All right, so where else do we want to go? Let's go over to the left side, way down low, and just do a very simple one with dots. And then we're going to go up and to the left of the face, I believe, or maybe just a little bit below that. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and a 4. So 8 of them. And I'm going to put circles on the end of these. I love the ones with the circles on them. Actually, they're diamonds. I'm sorry. The ones with the diamonds on them. I think they're really, really pretty. Then I'm going to start dropping the arrows. I'm going to do 2 arrows on each one. Okay. And then one more snowflake. I want at least 5, maybe 6. So one right here, just with dots, really simple little arrows. And then I think one more right above his head. This one's kind of in that bright area, which I think is really pretty. And I'm just going to pull down a couple arrows on each one. Beautiful. All right, so I'm going to repeat the process on the purple deer and just go through and take my time. And if you're at a loss for how to shape your snowflakes, just Google snowflakes and look at the images and see how other people have shaped their snowflakes, and it will give you infinite ideas of what to do. All right, so I'm going to just scribble a little bit down here in the grass just to get that little gold reflection down there. I think that looks beautiful. All right, so the next thing is we're going to start putting these dots around the outside of the card. So pick a corner, start in the corner, and pick a amount of space in between the dots, and then just try to be consistent. And I just try to watch for when I turn my corners. Okay, and what I mean by that is as I'm approaching the corner of a card, when I get a couple inches away, I start assessing how many more dots I can put in that area. So right there, I can put 3 more dots right there. 1, 2, 3, just like that. So I might have spaced them a little bit further apart than some of the other dots, but that's okay. And I'm going to do the same thing in this corner. 1, 2, 3. And they're a little bit closer together, but that's okay. As I approach this corner, I'm going to think the same thing right about here. I can fit 3 or 4 of them there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. And that looks great. And I think I'm going to put a little dot in the middle of each one of the snowflakes. I don't want to put more than that because, again, I want the focal point to be on the deer and not everything else. And that's why I like everything else, you know, kind of the same color. It recedes in the background and just looks beautiful and looks like you spent a lot of time with the details. All right, we're coming around the corner on the last set of dots. And then the only other thing I think we need to do, let's see. Oh, I forgot a snowflake. There we go. Okay. So I think the only thing I want to do now is grab some white, and we're going to go in and take care of the spots on the side of the deer to make it look more fawn-like. So go back to your original drawing, the printout we did, and just dot a little bit. And now that the deer are dry, we can put white on top of it very lightly. Trust our process. So I'm going to wet my brush, and I'm going to come in and feather the edges just a little bit. And then I'm going to blot. There it is. Look at that subtlety. I think that adds just enough on the side of the deer. Let's do it to the other one. All right, just kind of drag my brush lightly. Few little spots on the back of the deer. Trusting the process. Wet my brush. Feather the edge. And then we're going to blot. You guys, I hope you've learned a few things in doing these deer, and I hope you also have stuck with it and realized that this is a little bit easier than maybe you thought it was going to be. And they're very forgiving. You know, they're kind of abstract little Christmas deer, and they're beautiful in their own way. So just go around, make your last little touches, and I hope you make a lot more cards, and check out some of my other videos where I'm making Christmas cards as well with trees and other things that are a lot of fun. And I will see you in the future. Cheers.